Good evening, everyone. We're just going to do a quick audio check to make sure that we can hear everyone. And let's see. Angela, can you unmute so we can hear you?
Hi, Sam. Can you hear me? Test,
Yes.
test.
Okay, great. Donna, let's just do a mic check with you as well.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, and Floyd.
I'm here.
Great. Okay, then we'll be able to start on time.
Thank you, Sam. So I'm going to wait 1 minute until it's here at 6 o'clock. And thank you, everyone, for attending the Water Quality Wednesday on March 13th, 2024 at 6 p.m. We're going to talk about the birds of Clear Lake today. We'll just wait 1 minute and then we'll get this going. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. Today we are going to talk about the birds of Clear Lake. This is our Water Quality Wednesday on March 13th, 2024 at 6 p.m. My name is Angela de Palma-Dow. I am with Water Resource Department in the County of Lake and the Watershed Protection District. And we have been doing Water Quality Wednesdays for about 3 years. We have been on kind of a hiatus. We took a little break, so we're so glad that everyone here is able to join us to learn about the birds of Clear Lake. And just some reminders, with the platform is a Zoom webinar. We will have question and answer at the end of all the presentations. There is not a chat box right now, but when we go to questions and answer, there's capabilities for submitting questions through the chat box. We also are on Facebook, so it's the County of Lake Facebook feed. It's live right now. There is a little bit of delay between the Zoom webinar and Facebook. But if any questions are submitted on the Facebook feed, I will see them and I can address them at the end of the presentations. This meeting is being recorded. It is on the it will be recorded and put on the County of Lake YouTube channel. It'll also be on the Water Resources YouTube channel. We have a whole section for Water Quality Wednesdays, so it'll be added to that library. And we will share it on @Lake County Water, the County of Lake Facebook recording that it'll be on too. And we always have an evaluation. We want to make sure that we're providing useful information in a way that's accessible. And so we have a link that will go into the chat for everybody. So you can take 2 minutes and just fill it out at the end. Let us know how we did and if there's anything we could do better so we can improve upon what we're doing for future Water Quality Wednesdays. So Water Quality Wednesdays, they're an open, accessible forum for us to share information because there's a lot going on out there in Clear Lake. So we really want to demystify lake and water science through these open, free public forums, virtually accessible, because there's a lot of people, places, programs, and projects that are going on. And this is one way that we can communicate with the public about what's out there. And so you know what's going on with our valuable resource, because we all play an important part in protecting these valuable aquatic systems. And we do want to acknowledge the original indigenous caretakers and bird watchers here in Clear Lake. And so indigenous communities and tribes have lived in Lake County and around Clear Lake for up to 2,000 years that we know of, based on record, historical record. These are descendants of the Eastern Pomo, Southwestern Pomo, Wapo, Miwok Lake, and they now make up the 7 federally recognized tribes of Lake County. And this includes Big Valley Tribe of Pomo Indians, Scotts Valley Band of California Pomo Indians, Habimatal Pomo of Upper Lake, the Robinson Rancheria Pomo Indians of California, Elam Indian Colony, Iroquois Nation of Northern California and Middletown Rancheria of Pomo Indians, all live here in Lake County. And Clear Lake was referred to as Big Water or Hobbiton. So today we're going to be talking about birds. I'm not a bird person. I'm a water plant person. My head's always down looking in the water. So I'm so excited that we have some knowledgeable speakers today, guest speakers, who talk about birds. But we just want to overview that birds are important for lake ecology. They really connect the land and the air and the water here. Birds can impact water quality in both ways, good and bad ways. So think of swans. Some invasive swans can pose water quality issues. Birds are really great at regulating and transporting invasive species. So regulating, they can eat invasive fish, for example, bait fish. They also can move invasive species around, and that could drastically change water bodies. They can also be host to pathogen, parasites, and disease that are all part of natural cycles in lakes and ponds and streams. They're also indicator species. So think of classic example of Clear Lake with the DDT, the Grebes, made famous in Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. They're also indicator species for fisheries, what type of fisheries, like bait fish out there. There's also going to be regional variations in indicators of climate change. So the amount of birds, where they are, when they're coming, when they're migrating, can all help managers and researchers provide some indicators of these things. And of course, here in Clear Lake, bird watching is a huge tourism draw. People come from all over just to go bird watching in Clear Lake. We have water trails that are specifically dedicated to maximize your bird watching. So we're really excited tonight to learn about birds. These are the speakers. Again, know way more about birds than me, and so I'm so excited to learn from them. First, we'll listen to Donna Mackiewicz. She's from the Audubon Society of Lake County, the Redbud Audubon, and she's also a part of Lake County Land Trusts, as well as many other organizations. She works really hard. And then we also have Dr. Floyd Hayes. He's at Pacific Union College. He's a zoologist. And a recent study that he published in 2022 was on the Clarks and Western Grebes here in Clear Lake. And then we'll also hear a little bit from Dr. Scott Butterfield, also Pacific Union College. He's the Clark Professor of Conservation Technology and the Nature Conservancy's California chapter. So I introduced the speakers. Donna, if you want to go ahead and set up your screen share, I do. In the meantime, while you're doing that, I want to acknowledge our County of Lake staff that are working tonight over hours to help us put on this presentation. So Sam Houston, thank you so much. Matthew Rosting, thank you for your support tonight in making this possible. Donna, we're sharing our screen?
Yes, do you see it?
Nope.
Oh, no.
That's okay, try again.
Okay, I'm going to share screen. Go to the PowerPoint. Share and go.
Okay, something's happening. Great.
Little box.
I see it, and then go down. Yeah.
Here we go. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Donna Mackiewicz from Redbud Audubon, and I'm so excited to be here. It was just so hard to pick out 25 minutes of the 161 birds in the county to share. So I decided to share just what I see here in my Clear Lake Oaks Keys neighborhood at this time of year. I'm starting with this slide that was taken by a neighbor, Pam Smithston, on Saturday. There was a fisherman out there, and he just discarded his line with the bobber still on it, and this western grebe is entangled. So when the bird tried to dive, the bobber actually held it from diving deep. And did you know that Redbud Audubon has over 20 bins at boat ramps for fishermen to dispose of unwanted fishing line? And then we have volunteers that collect it and send it in for recycling. Audubon's mission is to restore and conserve natural ecosystems, focusing on birds and other wildlife and their habitats for the benefit of humanity and Earth's biological diversity. And Clear Lake is listed as at IBA, one of 7,258. It's a really important bird area. And for our younger viewers, I'd like to reintroduce the word that Angela spoke earlier, bioindicator. And bioindicators are living things, like she mentioned, like birds or plants that can be used to tell us about the health of our natural ecosystem. And our chapter, Redbud Audubon, has been studying birds for almost 50 years. Every December, for a 24-hour period, teams go study the same areas they've studied for years to count every bird they see. And all our lists are combined and sent to National Audubon. And this data, compared with other years, can give us valuable information. And this picture right here I thought was really interesting. The first sighting in Lake County of a European starling was only 3 birds back in 1957. And then this year, in that one day, we saw 347 of them. The middle photo is a white-headed woodpecker that hasn't been seen in the county for a long time. And the Cape Marian's a photo of a water ouzel or a common dipper in front of its nest. It's reported in this old bird folder that I have from 1947 to 57 that they were seen in every single stream and river and tributary here in Lake County. This is the osprey. Osprey nests can be spotted all around the lake. They're a large bird of prey with brown upper parts and white underparts, a white head and distinct black eye stripe. And in flight, their wings are usually held at an angle as they search for flying fish as they fly over the lake. And then they hover in place and then dive into the water to grab their prey. They feed almost entirely on fish, and if you look closely, it always carries the fish head first for aerodynamic flight. The bald eagle weighs in at 8 to 14 pounds and has a wingspan up to 8 feet. They can be seen snatching the fish catch from ospreys. Bald eagles prey on a variety of small animals, usually fish or waterfowl, but they'll even eat carrion, dead, and even cattle. And on the left is a immature that was just in our neighborhood 2 weeks ago. American crows and ravens can be seen around the county. Crows are social and live in tight-knit family units. Common ravens are larger, longer-winged, and heavier built than crows. And ravens' tails are tapered at the end, giving them a diamond or a wedge shape compared to a crow's fan-shaped tail. The red-tailed hawk is the most common hawk we see. Red tails have sharp eyesight that's 8 times better than humans. In flight, they can spy a mouse on the ground 100 feet in the air. And to keep their eyes clean, they have a third eyelid. They can close this extra eyelid when perched to shield their eyes from wind or for protection when diving to make a kill. Red-shouldered hawks are smaller and have brownish heads and backs, and then rufous shoulder patches and black and white flight feathers, and their tails have very narrow white bands, and they're fairly vocal, especially during the breeding season. Its typical call is like a loud kia scream, and it's often mimicked by scrub jays. Turkey vultures have an extraordinary sense of smell. They've been known to be able to smell carrion or dead stuff from over a mile away. This is the Canada goose with our CBC or Christmas bird count numbers. They're increasing in numbers, and both sexes of Canada goose have a black head and neck except for the broad white cheek patches extending from the throat to the rear of the eye. The breast, abdomen, and flanks range in coloring from a light gray to dark chocolate brown, blending into the back black neck and being separated by a white collar. Their bill, legs, and feet are black, and we've all heard their honking. From a distance, the double-crested cormorants are dark birds with snaky necks, but up close they're quite beautiful with orange-yellow skin on their face, and their throat is just as colorful. They have striking aquamarine eyes that sparkle like jewels and a mouth that is bright blue on the inside. The double crest of the double-crested cormorant is only visible on adults during the breeding season, which is now. And cormorants often stand out in the sun with their wings spread out to dry. They have less preen oil than other birds, so their feathers can get soaked rather than shedding water like a duck. Though this seems like a problem for the bird that spends its life in water, wet feathers probably make it easier for cormorants to hunt underwater with great agility and speed. One of the largest wingspans at 9 feet is the American white pelican, weighing from 7 to 20 pounds. They're similar to the brown pelican in shape, but much larger and live in very different habitats. The whites occur far inland, and they feed cooperatively, do not dive from the air for fish like the browns do. Despite its great size, it's a spectacular flyer, with flocks often soaring very high in the air, wheeling and circling in unison. They have a bumper horn on their head, on their bill, and that tells you that the adults are ready to breed. And of the 8 species of pelicans around the world, only American white pelicans have them. It drops off after the birds mate and lay eggs. Great blue herons grab their prey in their strong beaks or use their dagger-like bills to impale. This action is simply known as bill stab. They shake their prey to break the spines before gulping them down. They can swallow fish that are much wider than their narrow neck and have even been seen snatching small birds in flight. These 4.5-foot birds can be found in every continent except Antarctica. Great egrets are much larger than the snowy egrets, and they have a yellow-orange bill, whereas snowies have a black bill and they have yellow feet, although immatures have a dullish greenish leg. The snowy egret is a small white heron, and there was so much great demand for their beautiful plumes that it almost led to the bird's extinction, and today the snowy egret and other birds are protected from hunters under the Endangered Species Act. In flight, the black-crowned night heron looks like a medium to large, hefty, pale gray bird with a black cap. These social birds breed in colonies of stick nests, usually built over water, and they engage in bait fishing, luring or distracting fish by tossing edible or inedible buoyant objects into the water within striking range. And this is an immature black-crowned night heron. And of course, night herons get their name due to the fact that they hunt at night and early morning, and then they rest during the day. They'll eat anything from plants, leeches, crayfish, reptiles, and amphibians. The green heron is very beautifully colored and hard to spot sometimes. It's often hidden in a tangle of leaves. They're so secretive that they've nested in my backyard for 3 years before I even spotted the nest. These are from last year's first and second clutches, and they were taken by kayak by Pam Smithson, my neighbor, and it was just amazing. They were here all this time. I knew there was a bird up there, but I could never see him. Very interesting to watch. This is a pied-bill grebe. These small brown birds have unusually thick bills that turn silver and black in summer, and they have a real and unmistakable call. They have lobed toes, an adaptation they use to propel themselves underwater to get food. And grebes have an ancient lineage, and research has shown that they're most closely related to flamingos. Oh, and you have to watch them. They do this really cool sinking maneuver. Like, you'll see the grebe, you're watching the grebe, and it slowly sinks straight down underwater. It's really cool. The ruddy duck CBC numbers are quite interesting. Back in 2017, we had over 16,000 in one day. This year, we only counted 64. There are 16 species of diving ducks, and the ruddies are small and compact diving duck that sit low on the water, and sometimes it'll cock its tail up. The male's bill turns blue in breeding, and they feed on seeds and roots of plants and eat aquatic insects, mollusks, crustaceans, but rarely fish. The diving bufflehead is a small chubby duck with a small dark gray bill. The male has a large white patch extending from the eye to the back of the head, and it's slightly larger than the female. The female is a dark brown and lighter brown below, and the female has a single white patch on her cheek. In North America, we have 3 mergansers, which are species of diving ducks, and they have long, slender bills that have serrated edges that are used for grasping and holding their prey. Our 3 species are hooded, red-breasted, and common mergansers, and this is a hooded. The hooded merganser is the smallest of our 3 native merganser species, and it also seems to be the least numerous. They are cavity nesters and will nest in a wood duck nest box. The common merganser is a large diving duck with a long body and a long straight bill. The female common merganser has a gray body with cinnamon red crested head and the male is mostly white with a green head and an orange-red bill. The diving American coot is a medium-sized bird, sometimes referred to as a mud hen. Adult coots are a dark gray color with short white bills and have a dark band at the tip. And sometimes you'll notice there'll be red on their above their bill. That shows that they're inbreeding. Mallards are dabbling ducks. They feed in the water by tipping forward and grazing on underwater plants, and they almost never dive. This Linda Lewis photo is of male mallards. They're all males, called drakes. They're undergoing a simultaneous molt, and during this time, they're unable to fly since they lose all of their flight feathers. This is a process unique to waterfowl since they're able to survive without flying for extended periods, unlike most birds. I want to take a moment to thank the following people who've shared their slides with me and photos. Especially Pam and Christina and Anthony, Doug, and Bill. And then every once in a while I use Macaulay Library's photos at Cornell Labs, and I just really appreciate it. Here's gull ID. This is a hard one. Even as an experienced birder, I get stumped with gulls. The adults are always easiest to ID, and there's other characteristics such as the bill, head shape, and the leg color, which is not always visible, like in this picture. The California gull legs are usually yellow, except the first year they're pink, and then the second year they're pale yellowish green. And this is one of Anthony Glazzolo's at Birds of Orange County. He has beautiful photos and does programs, and you can check out Anthony at birds, spelled B-Y-R-D-S, at ocbirds.com. The belted kingfisher is one of the few species in which the female is more brightly colored than the male. It nests in burrows along earthen banks and can be seen diving to catch fish and crayfish with its heavy straight bill. These ragged crest birds are a powdery blue-gray, and males have one blue band across their white breast, and then the females will have a blue and a chestnut band. Here is, oops, it's gone. The black phoebe is a flycatcher with sooty black body and a crisp white belly. They sit in the open on low perches to scan for insects, and they're usually doing a shrill chirp. The killdeer is one of the largest ringed plovers, and the only plover in its range with a double breast band. Killdeers have brown underparts, white underparts, and orange rumps. Their eyes are dark with a bright red eye ring. And it kind of sounds like they're saying their name, killdeer, killdeer. It may not seem like it because seeing a sora takes some effort, but the sora is the most abundant and widespread rail in North America. The best time to see a sora is in the morning or late afternoon, when they're more likely to venture out of the dense vegetation to look for food. And they have a really interesting whinny sound. This is a spotted sandpiper. They can be found on the shoreline, and it's the most widely spread sandpiper. Its characteristic teetering motion has earned it the name like teeter peep and tiptail. The function of this teetering motion isn't known, but chicks can teeter as soon as they hatch from the egg, and the teetering gets faster when the bird is nervous, but then stops when it's alarmed, aggressive, or courting. Everyone knows what a male red-winged blackbird looks like. So here's the female and an immature male. The red-winged blackbird is a highly polygamous species, meaning males will have more than one mate at a time, sometimes up to 15. And if you've heard some singing outside your house, especially in the morning, it's probably the northern mockingbird. They're medium-sized, slender songbirds with a long tail, and adults are grayish above and whitish below with 2 wing bars. The brewer's blackbirds are small, long-legged birds. They have long tails that balance their bodies and heads, and adult males are the glossy black with the gleam of purple-blue on their heads, green iridescence on their body, and bright yellow eyes. And the females are kind of boring. They're just brown bodies, darker tints on their tails and wings, and have brown eyes. The phainopepla males are a silky black bird with a white wing bar, that white patches that appear when the bird takes flight. The females are gray and they eat mainly mistletoe berries, and they often perch high in shrubs and catch insects on the wing. They rarely drink water, getting all the water they need from mistletoe, and a single phainopepla can eat over 1,000 mistletoe berries in a day. Yellow-rumped warblers are the only warbler to digest waxes found in bayberries and wax myrtles, and its ability to use these fruits allows it to winter farther north than other warblers. They're the warbler you're most likely to see fluttering out from a tree to catch a flying insect, and you can imagine how they got their name, yellow-rumped. Anna's hummingbirds. Most of the hummingbirds you're going to see here are Anna's. They feed on nectar from flowers and feeders, and this hummingbird eats more insects than any other North American hummingbird. They'll pluck spiders and trapped insects from spider webs, and they were originally found only near Baja and all the way up through San Francisco, and they've increased in population and expanded their breeding range all the way up to British Columbia. The western grebe and the Clark grebes have been identified as birds of conservation concern by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. These birds may look identical at first glance since they occupy the same range and habitat, and it becomes a challenge for the beginning birder to tell the difference between the two of them. They're designed to swim and dive for food, so their hind legs are positioned farther back on their body than normal, making them awkward and clumsy on land. And they might appear lame on land, but they make up for it in water. And the next couple of grebe photos were taken by Christina Sheff. She's known around the world as the grebe whisperer. Here is her Clark's grebe in the back. Notice it has white above the eye, and then the western grebes, black comes all the way down below the eye. They have many fascinating behaviors. During mating season, grebes will engage in a maneuver called rushing, in which coordinated groups of 2 or more will sprint 60 feet across the water in about 7 seconds. While they rush all year, the busy dating season is coming up, so be sure to keep an eye out. They lunge their body forward and come completely out of the water as they rush across the water side by side with their necks curved gracefully forward. Weed dancing is another one of their behaviors. It occurs late in the pair formation sequence, and it's limited to male-female birds. With weeds in their bill, a bird rises to nearly vertical position and turns vigorously with its feet so that 2/3 of its body remain out of the water. Then the two birds come together and touch, continuing the slow turns. And you can learn more about Christine at ksnaturephotography.com. She does wildlife tours around the world too. And can you guess this species? It looks like it could be a western because the black comes down below the eye. And if you see the CBC numbers, 2017 was really a good year for Christmas bird count at 12,000, but then this year we only had a couple hundred. And I think I'm close to my 20 minutes. This is a male wood duck. And again, thank you to all the people that lent me their photos. And I thought I'd share this one. This was taken by Pam just when we had our dusting of snow. Looking out her back porch, you can see a rainbow in the background, pelicans flying over, and I'm sure there's grebes and Canada goose and coots and mallards, reddy ducks, cormorants, all in this picture. And with that, I'll say the end with another one of Pam's photos. She calls this one Punk Pelicans, and it was taken out at Clark's Island, and they're showing their ends. So I think I'll stop my share. Let's see, stop share, and turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Donna. You did really good on time, so thanks. We'll go now to Dr. Floyd Hayes if you want to get your screen set up. And I wanted to let everybody know that's attending via the Zoom webinar that we will have a question and answer session, and you can raise your hand and ask a question, and I'll open up your mic. So it's your, I see your, there we go. I saw your email, now I see your PowerPoint, and now I see the thing. Okay, great. So yeah, so Dr. Floyd Hayes, and then we also have Dr. Scott Butterfield that can answer any questions is here also. So thank you, and turn it over to you.
Okay, Angela, I have until 6:45.
Yeah, you have 15 minutes. Yep. And then we'll do question and answer. So yeah, because Donna did such a great job.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the ecology of the grebes of Clear Lake. There's actually 6 different species, but there are 2 that Donna had already talked about that are the most common species. And so I'm going to be focusing on these because they're the most iconic birds of Clear Lake. And if you're not familiar with them, you need to get familiar with them. So just a little bit of a history about them. Way back in 1949, 1953, 1957, the entire lake was sprayed or applied somehow with DDT, a pesticide, to control the Clear Lake gnat, which was a nuisance. And shortly afterwards, in the late 1950s, the entire breeding population disappeared. They just stopped nesting, and there were some mass mortalities of like up to 100, 150 grebes that were dying along the lakeshore, and they tested their tissues and found that they had high concentrations of DDT. And this became the first documented instance of biomagnification in which a toxic chemical was increasing in its concentration as it moved up the food chain from smaller animals to larger, increasingly larger predators. And it was included in Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring. There's been a lot of other problems on the lake. From 1962 to 1975, the pesticide methylparathion was sprayed annually to control the Clear Lake gnat. It was thought to be harmless to the grebes, but there was only a very anecdotal comment made about it by the researchers that were applying that particular pesticide. But nevertheless, it was less toxic and less persistent than DDT. 1872 to 1957, there's a long history of mercury mining at Sulphur Bank. Mercury mined that is thought to have impacted the grebes, although we're not real sure exactly how their impact was. In 1967, there was a small fish, the Mississippi silverside, that was introduced, and within a year it became like the most abundant fish in the lake. And then in 1985, now the Mississippi silverside, I believe, was introduced intentionally. Around 1985, the threadfin shad was first detected. They're not even sure how it got in there. And it too became super abundant within a year or two. And these fish are still rather abundant today, from what I understand. And they probably had a positive impact on the grebes because the grebes feed on these birds. Furthermore, they probably competed with the Clear Lake gnats because the gnat larvae are down in the water and they're feeding on the zooplankton and phytoplankton in the water. And then they would emerge from the lake as adults and fly into people's homes and all that sort of thing. But these fish were competing with them for the food, eating on the plankton in the water. And because of that, the Clear Lake gnat is probably nowhere near as common today as it was way back in the 1950s and earlier, or before these fish were introduced. So it's kind of unusual because usually when you introduce fish, it has a detrimental effect. It certainly does on native species of fish, but not necessarily on the fish-eating birds. So the breeding population has been monitored periodically. There were 0 birds nesting in the late 1950s when they first began searching for them. Nobody knows how many there were before then. There was one published comment estimate that there were 1,000 pairs of grebes breeding. So by the mid-1960s, the number went up to like 140, I think, or something like that. And then it went back down in the 1970s. Nobody monitored the nesting grebes from the mid-70s until the early 1990s. So we're not sure exactly what was happening. But even when they started monitoring in the 1990s, they weren't finding large numbers of grebe nests. And that all changed around the year 2000, which was the first year they found more than 1,000 nests, and it was far more than that, more than 2,500. I started monitoring the birds and the grebes on Clear Lake in the year 2010. And during the summers from 2010 to 2019, I was canoeing probably 100, 150 miles or more each summer. I probably canoed about 1,500 miles on Clear Lake and counting grebe nests, and it was a lot of work. But you can see we actually averaged more than 3,000 nests a year, and one year we had nearly 6,000 nests. So this graph indicates that the grebes have made an amazing comeback on Clear Lake. So in terms of identification, we just heard Donna just spoke about that a little bit, but I'll just go through it briefly again. So the western grebe comprises about 85% of the nesting birds on the lake, and the Clark's grebes about 15%. They used to think they were the same species, just different morphs, like blue-eyed and brown-eyed or whatever, but they are reproductively isolated. They do hybridize. We'll talk about that in a moment. But you can see a comparison here between them, the yellowish bill versus the bright orange bill of the Clark's grebe, and the black below the eye and black above the eye. So they do hybridize. I have data on that. I haven't quite analyzed that, but I would estimate that about a third of the Clark's grebes are actually mating with western grebes. That's a western grebe male on top, Clark's grebe female underneath. The males have a longer beak than the females, and it's pretty easy to distinguish between the two species. And here's a mixed pair, western grebe on the left, Clark's grebe on the right, with a presumed hybrid chick hitching a ride on the Clark's grebe. So these birds are renowned for their courtship, as Donna pointed out, and they have very elaborate displays, which strengthens the nominally monogamous relationship. We're not sure how much cheating goes on, but we're very suspicious. There's a weed display and a weed ceremony. Here they are rushing across the water. This is my favorite. These are all my photos, by the way. Sometimes you'll get up to 4 birds running across the water. It's usually a male and a female, but sometimes you get 2 males rushing across. This is probably 2 males and a female. Obviously the female might be more interested in the male that's stronger and runs a farther distance. Sometimes they take off and go the opposite direction, which probably tells the female that the guy's a loser. We're not sure exactly what goes on in their minds, that we can only speculate. In terms of their breeding biology, they build 2 different types of nests. They often nest in emergent marsh vegetation. I call these marsh nests. And they form large colonies often in these marshes. This is at Anderson Marsh. And then they often nest in open water, especially when the water levels are low and they can't really nest up in the marshes. They happen to be more vulnerable to wind and motorboat generated waves as well. So here's a bird nesting in the open water. These are floating nests. And here is a huge colony. There was one year we had about 4,000 grebe nests scattered across about 3 kilometers at the north end of the lake, and it was pretty spectacular. So they only mate on the nest, and the male, as you can see, tenderly stomps on the female's head and belly flops into the water afterwards. Pretty comical to watch. They lay the egg on the nest, and the nests are rather flimsy, so they have to work on constructing them and reinforcing them every day. And if they stop doing that, within a couple of days, those nests will disintegrate. So it's a lot of work to maintain those nests. They're a valuable resource. And they're rather good parents. When they depart from the nest, they often cover up the eggs to camouflage them from potential predators. They're very defensive of a nest if you get too close to them. They spend a lot of time and energy maintaining these nests, and they incubate the eggs for about 23 days, they think, on average. And so they're very defensive, and they don't like it if you get too close to them. And these are with the telephoto lens, of course, but they're very comical birds. They're precious. And they're so excited during the breeding season that they continue their activities at nighttime, which surprised us because we had cameras set out there in the water to monitor the activities at the nest. And here's a couple of birds in the background that are doing the rush display across the water, and they are mating at nighttime. And we were surprised to learn about that. They even lay eggs at nighttime. Here's a grebe above on an empty nest, and nearly an hour later, whoa, he's sitting on an egg and it's still dark. The they can do some weird things. For example, they sometimes destroy eggs, and we're not sure why they do this. This is very rare. You can see 2 eggs right here, and then suddenly, nearly 3 minutes later, there's only one. And then another egg gets laid hour and a half later, and just 6.7 minutes later, you could see the egg in the water. The grebe just threw it off, and it's only the male grebes that do it, and they do it late in the breeding season. And there's several hypotheses for why they may do that, but we don't really know for sure. These guys, the females, are prolific egg layers. When they first lay the eggs, they're kind of a pale blue, whitish color. And the longer they've been in the nest, the browner they get because they get stained by the water and the vegetation of the nest. And you can see 4 old eggs there that were probably laid by the pair on this nest. And then you have 4 newer eggs that were dumped. And so they do this all the time. They dump eggs like mad. Here's 11 eggs in a dead juvenile California gull. We think it was speared by the grebes. They often incubate up to 10 eggs. They very rarely incubate more than that. But this is an unusual nest with 18 eggs that was incubated by a hybrid pair, a mixed pair of grebes, hybridizing pair, I should say. They weren't hybrids. And this is the most I've seen, 31 eggs. Now, normally they don't incubate these large nests. I call them egg dumps. So usually when there's more than 10 eggs, the eggs aren't actually being incubated, except in that one example of 18 eggs. And very unusual. They're just they have so many eggs, and they're just kind of hoping somebody else might take care of them. And we used to, collect them and bring them home and fry them. And they tasted a little bit like mercury, though. So we weren't sure if it was very safe. And I'm actually just joking. So then the eggs will hatch, and the chicks come out, beautiful little guys coming out. And then they very quickly climb up on the parent who happens to be on the nest. Now both parents take turns incubating. And as soon as the last chick hatches, they leave the nest. They don't stay there. The chicks are independent. After they hatch, relatively independent. They can see, they could swim, they could walk a little bit to climb up on the parents. And so they're pretty independent. Here's 3 chicks on a parent with 2 on, 1 following. And so they have pretty good family lives. If you want to know where to find them on the lake, these are the most important grebe colonies. This is based on the number of nests per year over 10 summers. You can see the north end at Rodman Slough has the most. The south end by Anderson Marsh often has large colonies, except that there are 0 when the water level is really low. So water level is important for these birds. They also nest in areas near Lakeport and Kelseyville. In terms of predation, crows are the greatest daytime predators during the day. We've had ravens as well, but that's much more unusual. California gulls are pretty common on the lake, but they very rarely eat the eggs. They do once in a while. Here's a ring-bill gull flying off of the chick. We saw a couple instances of that happening. You can see the head there of the hapless little chick as it's being carried away. We only had a couple of incidents of minks, American mink, preying on the nest. This one was very unusual because it was in the middle of the day. My cat's jumping up. And at nighttime, though, raccoons are very, very frequently getting into the nest, especially the ones that are in the marshes. They have to swim across more open water to get to open water nests. So raccoons are the top predator at nighttime, and predation is a pretty big event. There's a lot of predation that occurs, and then there's a variety of human threats. Motorboats speeding through colonies is not very good. They could potentially hit nests, as you can see. Fortunately, most boaters avoid these colonies because the birds nest mostly where there's a lot of weeds in the water, and it tangles up the motors of the motorboats. And so they usually avoid the grebes. And so the boaters and grebes can live together in more or less in mutual harmony if they respect each other. This is the only nest that I ever saw in 10 summers that was actually flipped over by a boat that was speeding through a colony. And you can see the egg got kind of twisted up in the debris there. And there was another egg that disappeared. I think it's underneath it. Entanglement in fishing gear is a problem. Donna just pointed out one example. I have personally seen 7 incidents of birds on Clear Lake that were tangled in fishing gear. And I think all of them were grebes. They're very vulnerable to that. And sometimes they die. I've rescued a few of them. It happens. Hey, if you guys know if you've ever seen this happen, please let me know, because I'm actually collecting data on that. I have more than 40 incidents of that happening on Clear Lake to various species of birds. And then the weed control people often spray the water with herbicides that will control the weeds. And we're not sure what the effect is on the grebes, but there's some nesting grebes here. And yeah, we don't know what the effect is. And it is 6:44. I'm done.
Great. Good job, Floyd. Thank you. And I'm going to open if anybody has any questions, I did get some that I will ask here. But I want to make sure that, okay, I have my panelists and my chat all open.
You know,
Great.
there's one thing I forgot to mention.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so we do have plans. We're applying for a grant to obtain more funding to monitor these birds with drones, and to get high school students in Lake County involved with the project. So our fingers are crossed that we will get some funding for that in the future.
And that funding is sourced through the Blue Ribbon Committee for the rehabilitation of Clear Lake. And those funds come from general fund, and then they go through the California Natural Resource Agency. So if anybody's interested in supporting that project, you guys can speak in person on behalf of Dr. Floyd Lays and Dr. Scott Butterfield 2 Thursdays from now, March 26th. Am I off a week? Maybe it's next week. The 21st? The 21st. The
21st.
Thank you. The 21st, and at 10 a.m. at the City of Lakeport City Hall. There's also a virtual login, but if anybody wants to support that, or that would be an avenue to do that. And if you don't know how to do that, you want more information, you can call us at Water Resources at 707-263-2344, and we can give you all that information. No problem. We enjoy being able to support research on Clear Lake. So. Thanks for that. And we have some questions. Donna, do you want to log on too? Because we have questions for you also. And so we have a good about almost 15 minutes of questions. I probably only need like 2 minutes to end up the whole thing. So we'll go through there. So we do have a question. I believe this is for the grebes. So Dr. Hayes, do the grebes mate each time they lay an egg, or can they lay several eggs after mating?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm not sure how much is known about that. I don't really have an answer. I'm not certain about that. They might be able to store the sperm for a while and lay multiple eggs. I'm not even sure all the eggs are actually fertile, but they can produce large numbers of eggs. And that's true of all grebes, probably. There was a pied-billed grebe that produced like 50 eggs in a season once,
Wow.
a captive one.
Great, thank you. And then I have a question. I believe this is for Donna, but how do you tell ravens from crows if they're not side by side? You did talk a little bit about it, but a lot of it was size based and if they're not next to each other.
The sound, excuse me, I learned a bird by sound by listening to him. That's one way. And then always the tail. If you see the fan-shaped tail, that's going to be your crow, and more club-shaped will be your raven.
Great. And then we have a question. Thank you. Maybe Floyd said this, but what time of year is grebe mating? And I think you guys both kind of alluded to it's coming up, right?
They tend to be late breeders. We've had them nesting as early as mid-April, but normally they don't breed and start breeding until like mid-June. And they don't really peak until August. I've had them incubating eggs as late as October 3, but that was only 1 year. They usually finish up by early September.
Great. And then we have another question is, what's your favorite bird? Donna, this is it.
That's not fair. I don't know. What is my favorite bird? Any bird that I'm looking at the moment, probably.
How do you choose just one, right?
I really love phainopeplas because they come to my property every year for a couple of months, and then they leave, and I can tell that they're coming back almost to the day. There's so many. I love all birds. Not crazy about invasive species. House sparrow, swans, I don't need to talk about.
Thank you. Okay, so we have another question. This might be for you, but somebody asked about traffic collisions. And are traffic collisions, we do have a major highway that goes, 2 major highways that surround the lake. Is that a big impact on bird populations? Do we know or not know?
As far as vehicles hitting the birds, gosh, I don't know. Floyd, would you like to take that? I don't, unless if you're paying attention and the bird's paying attention.
I would say probably not. I mean, you can find dead birds on the road, but there's not that many of them. Probably the biggest cause of bird mortality in Lake County would be cats. Cats are extremely efficient at capturing and killing birds. They do pick on the smaller ones, though. So the larger ones are going to die from other reasons. I'd say around Clear Lake itself, probably the fishing gear is the #1 cause of adult mortality.
Well, we have a lot of fishing going on, and we have a lot of cats. There's so many feral cats out there. So, okay, so I have some other questions that just came in all at once. So do you ever feed the wild birds, so not including hummingbirds? And is there anything to be aware of for a bunch of birds collecting at one feeder?
I believe you shouldn't feed the birds unless you're going to do it responsibly. Feed, as far as hummingbirds, if I do put sugar water out there, I'll change it every day or two and always clean the surfaces really good. Our hummingbirds will eat insects, and really the reason we're feeding birds is to bring them in so we can observe them. If you stop feeding, it's not going to hurt the bird. Let's see, hummingbirds, I guess to observe them, you're going to put the nectar out. I always put shredded apple or raisins out for the mockingbird, and then in the springtime, our orioles will love the jelly, especially grape jelly.
I have not been successful with the orioles. I've done it for 2 years next to the tree that, like, you know, several neighbors and friends have success. So I'm hoping maybe soon it'll come up. When you say being responsible with feeding the birds, it's just cleaning the feeders and yeah.
And food. Don't leave anything out for long periods of time, especially your water dishes. You know, clean your water as often as you would want your water dish cleaned. I mean, you're not going to go drink out of a dirty dish, so don't make them drink out of the dirty dish.
Okay, this question is for Floyd. What is the grebe population on the lake this year?
I haven't been up there to count them.
Maybe 2023 numbers?
The only time we count them is during Christmas, and we were counting them during the project, but they haven't been really counted since 2019. So as Donna said, during the Christmas bird count, there are only a few hundred birds, and that's not too unusual. Sometimes you get tens of thousands of birds on the lake during the Christmas bird counts, and sometimes they mostly leave when we think that when the water gets too cold and you have a fish die off, the grebes fly somewhere else looking for birds. So during the winter, sometimes they're hard to find. And so I don't know, Donna, are you seeing many this year?
I see probably 1,000 when I go out to the boat ramp between Clear Lake Oaks boat ramp and Rattlesnake Island. And I went out with Ed Legan all the way across the lake, and I bet we saw 8,000 to 10,000
Well, that's good. That sounds good. But a lot of them are actually going to leave and go farther north to nest, and some of the ones that nest here come from farther south. So the ones that are there now aren't necessarily going to be nesting.
And we actually had nests here in the flooded wetlands next to the Keys also last year.
Yeah, I bet that was a nice sight. Good to have water over there in those wetlands.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 more questions I think we have time for. So Donna, what is the best mosquito-eating local or native bird?
Right now, our barn swallows and tree swallows are coming in en masse. So I would say probably they're consuming quite a few. That's what I've seen the most of, you know, quickly. And then the hummingbirds are always snatching up something.
And do the swallows also consume the gnats? That's any day now we're going to get the gnat hatch.
The gnats, and they love dragonflies too.
Oh. And then somebody asked to ask for a little more information about the barn swallows.
Oh, your barn swallows are coming into town, and they'll be building their mud nests probably above your doorway. Remember, if you don't want barn swallows nesting near your house, sometimes people put up a mylar balloon or a little wind catcher just to discourage them. The tree swallows will be coming and beginning nesting, so have your bluebird and all your nest boxes cleaned out and ready for them. And you can tell your barn swallow, not, of course, by the sound. If you use Merlin Bird ID, that's a great way to identify your birds. And the barn swallows have a forked tail. So that's, you know, just looking up, you'll be able to tell, oh, that's a barn swallow.
Great, thank you. I have one last question. And it could be, I think, mostly for Floyd, but Clear Lake has some water quality issues, namely cyanobacteria blooms that can get pretty severe in the summer. How do these blooms, or does it seem like the blooms are affecting grebes or other birds?
That is a very good question that needs to be investigated more. The grebes often just suddenly abandon a nesting colony for no apparent reason. We're not sure why, and I suspect it may have to do with a localized algal bloom that is removing the oxygen from the water, and the schools of fish move elsewhere. And if they're too far away for the birds to swim over, catch fish, come back to the nests, you know, they don't want to starve to death. They'll just abandon the nest. So I think they have a negative impact on the grebes.
It's like an indirect pathway domino impact. Yeah, domino effect. Okay, great, thank you. And then somebody commented that in January they saw thousands of grebes with pelicans and mergansers and gulls around Buckingham too. So this information is really great. The project you guys are getting through Blue Room Committee might have some, you know, public participation where people can provide data or something. And I know everybody that lives around the lake is taking notes of everything that's going on there, and that's an untapped resource. That's really great to be able to have that information. So thank you everybody for attending today. I have a few more slides, and if there's any other last questions, please get them in now. But if you have any questions or comments or anything for our speakers, their contact information is here. And if you have any questions or comments for Water Resources or for me, you can contact me at the information here. You can take a screenshot. You can always call us at 707-263-2344 or message us at Facebook at Lake County Water, and we can help direct the information, get you what you need. I do have in the chat the link for the evaluation. We want to know how we did, how you liked it, what you learned. If you didn't learn anything, please also let us know that. I'm sure that's doubtful. Because we want to improve Water Quality Wednesdays. I promise we're going to have more Water Quality Wednesdays going forward after our little break. But we want to know how we did and how we can improve. So filling out that form, it's only like a minute or two, is really essential. So thank you so much to the speakers today. Dr. Floyd Hayes, Donna, amazing. Thank you. Scott, thank you for being here for support. And I have a couple slides as we finish up here on upcoming events. So if you're interested in the Clear Lake Hitch, There's going to be a in-person meeting. This is in Kelseyville at the Methodist Unitarian Church on Main Street at 3810. This is going to be March 20th, Wednesday. It's not a Water Quality Wednesday, but we're going to be talking about water on a Wednesday at 6 p.m. And so if you're interested in that, it's free and it's open to anybody, but you do have to register. So go onto the Sierra Club Redwood chapter, look up their events and just register, just so they know how many people are going to be there so they can prepare. I will be one of the speakers, and then also Sarah Ryan, the EPA director from Big Valley Rancheria, and Peter Windrum, who founded the Chi Council, will also be speaking at that event. And then we have an event coming up in August, so the Clear Lake Integrated Science Symposium. This will be August 15th to the 16th. We haven't had a Clear Lake Symposium since 1998. So we're overdue, and we're really excited about having this. So just put it on your calendar. There is going to be recordings and digital information that you'll be able to reference if you can't make it. We will have some after hours events. So Thursday evening, we'll have a poster session, mingle, networking, opportunities for students, other learning. And then on Friday night, we're going to have a special Clear Lake film and a science slam at Soper Reese in Lakeport. So hopefully you can join some of those events. And again, really want to thank the speakers. Thanks again to Sam at County for staying over hours today and helping us put this on. And thank you everybody for attending. And we hope to see you at the next Water Quality Wednesday. Thank you.